balloon to represent Europe's environmental, security, and economic aspects. This is how nuclear energy will damage them. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Aurora Arias, and I'll be introducing this debate, during which my team, composed of Sofia Avila, Priscila Gonzalez, and Laura de Laura, would prove that, beyond any reasonable doubt, the only possible answer to the question asked in this debate, should European countries completely eliminate nuclear power as a source of energy, is a firm and resounding yes. This will be proved with two solid arguments backed up by our thesis, which states that, considering the many risks and the many better alternatives, nuclear energy is not only unnecessary, but dangerous. However, before continuing with our arguments, I'd like to establish some key concepts that will be essential for the correct comprehension and realization of the following debate. Firstly, regarding renewable energies, we'd like to mention a mix of energies, such as solar, wind, and geothermal, which will be a key part of our following arguments and the debate that will ensue from them. The next topic that I want to clarify is that of nuclear energy. For those of us who don't know, there are two kinds of nuclear energy, fission and fusion. The first I'll explain is fission, which consists of an atom splitting into two and releasing energy. This energy is then used to heat up water and create steam, which creates what we know as nuclear power. The second source is fusion, which consists of two atoms fusing, normally two hydrogen atoms coming from water. This process is less researched and used, however, and is thus more dangerous. That being said, I'll move on to explaining our two arguments, the first on risk and the second on alternatives. Our first argument is on risk, where we argue there are environmental, waste, and security risks that come with nuclear energy. Let's begin with the environmental risks. While it is true it can emit less CO2 than other renewable energies, this doesn't take away from the fact it can still negatively impact our environment. Due to the system of waste refrigeration, water is thermally contaminated and is then put into our water sources, causing a mix of the heated water and the normal water, damaging our aquatic biodiversity. The next risk is that of radioactive waste. Exposure to this waste can lead to health issues such as genetic mutations and can damage our environment. Not only this, but accidents resulting from nuclear power can also have catastrophic consequences. For example, Chernobyl, and these accidents are not a risk of the past. By 2050, there's a 50% chance another incident like Chernobyl will take place. Is this a risk we want to take? Our team defends we shouldn't. Finally, I'll discuss the security risks. Radioactive material can be misused by illicit entities and used to create nuclear weapons. Having nuclear waste all over Europe multiplies the possibilities for these groups to create such weapons. So, negative effects on the environment and our security prove this should be eliminated, especially knowing we have viable alternatives. That being said, I'll move on to our next argument on alternatives, in which we'll discuss the many safer, greener, and cheaper alternatives there are to nuclear power. Ladies and gentlemen, we all agree that the economic aspects of this issue are very important. However, even here, nuclear energy is beaten out by the renewable energy sources. When comparing the cost of construction and the cost of operation of energy plants, the cost for renewable energies for funds decreased, while those of nuclear energy increased. And per hour, the cost of nuclear energy is nearly double that of renewable energies such as solar or wind, proving this energy is not only safer, but more economically wise for Europe to use these alternatives. Now let's discuss resources. Nuclear fission uses uranium, a resource which is far from unlimited. However, renewable energies such as wind energy, solar energy, geothermal energy, these sources remain constant. The sun will always be present, the earth will never stop producing heat. And these are just some examples. Furthermore, the unlimited renewable energies I've mentioned have already been proven to provide almost 100% of energy to European countries such as Iceland, proving that there is no need for nuclear energy to take place instead of these alternatives. So, due to our two solid arguments on risks and alternatives, we'll prove throughout the rest of our interventions that the only possible answer to the question posed in this debate, should European countries completely eliminate nuclear power as a source of energy, is a firm and resounding yes. Thank you very much.
What if instead of viewing nuclear power as destructive, we can view it for what it truly is? The only solution to mitigate climate change right now. What if this technology offers us our best hope for the future? A future where wars are not funded by our addiction to fossil fuels. A future where energy is clean. A future where energy finally makes its way to the 700 million people on Earth that still don't have access to it. The idea that nuclear energy is harmful is costing us that future. Good afternoon, judges and fellow debaters. I'm Sofia Titsikova, and as part of the radionuclides, alongside Dana, Chloe and Kiara, I'm here to demystify nuclear energy, as ways convey its utmost importance, as it is the only energy source that can meet today's growing energy demand without further contributing to our losing battle against climate change. As the introduction speaker of the opposition team, I will begin by providing a definition of nuclear power and of the context, as well as introduce our key points. Nuclear power is the use of nuclear reactions from the energy within the nucleus of an atom to produce electricity, efficiently and safely. We are debating this motion in a context of international insecurity, high geopolitical tensions, and the urgent climate crisis. Our country is truly ready to forever lose nuclear power, or will this just further increase our reliance on fossil fuels and lead us to the point of no return? Our position will be based on three main arguments. In argument number 1, we will establish how nuclear energy has a bright future. In argument 2 and 3, we will prove the need for nuclear energy in our future. Argument 1, sustainability. Our first argument encompasses nuclear's potential to be limitless through its minimal land footprint, being the only energy source able to achieve this. Now I will proceed to introduce the first part of this argument, which is nuclear's potential to be unlimited through nuclear fusion, the process by which two light atomic nuclei combine together to form a single heavier one while releasing massive amounts of energy. The second part of argument 1 consists of nuclear power's minimal land footprint, which the R1 will further extend on. Argument number 2, energy crisis. Our second argument focuses on the importance of nuclear energy in the current context of our world. Due to the outbreak of various wars, energy independence is now more important than ever. Nuclear power can greatly contribute to achieving energy independence due to its incredibly high density. This chart from the energy industry of Germany shows Germany's high reliance on fossil fuels in 2022 during their nuclear phase-out. Before the phase-out, the dependency on imports was far lower. This clearly proves that eliminating nuclear power would cause Europe to be less energetically independent, having to purchase polluting fossil fuels from hostile countries, many of which are ruled by dictators. Argument number 3, deconstruction. This argument surrounds the fact that decommissioning nuclear power plants is a long, complex, and costly process that has 3 important parts to take into consideration. 1, logistical impossibility. 2, cost. And 3, purpose. To summarize, through argument number 1, we have clearly established how nuclear energy has a bright and sustainable future because of nuclear fusion. Through argument 2, we highlighted nuclear energy's irreplaceable job in reducing our reliance on imports, as well as contributing to energy security. In argument 3, we have pointed out the logistical impossibility of the nuclear deconstruction process. Fossil fuels are efficient, but polluting. Renewable energy is clean, but not efficient. What combines the best of both worlds? Nuclear energy. Therefore, it is key to saving the human species from the point of no return, where all of our efforts to redo our mistakes will be simply null. I would like to thank the judges, audience, and fellow debaters for their attention.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Sofia Avila, and I'm the first vote of the team that positioned in favor of the question posed in today's debate. Prior to explaining our own arguments, I would like to go over the other team's argument that they lined. Mainly their first 2 arguments, in which they talk about how the possibility of there being unlimited supply of energy through fusion. Well, as I'm gonna explain in our second argument of alternatives, this is simply not possible. We can see in this report how nuclear energy through fusion is taken from hydrogen atoms. These hydrogen atoms are taken from water, not from the atmosphere, meaning that water, obviously as we know, already poses its own detrimental consequences for the world, such as water shortages, problems that we already having. So using this possibility or alternative that they're playing, that they're trying to play as a utopic is simply not realistic. Additionally, they talk about being less dependent on other countries and about Europe's independence. Well, in our second argument, again, we're going to talk about how countries can find independence through the use of renewables, through alternative energies which do not need to include nuclear energy, which has detrimental consequences for the environment, which they're trying to talk about the climate change, but they're also proposing a solution that has its own set of consequences. Moving on to our own argumentative line. First, we're going to talk about an argument of risk, in which we talk about the environmental and security risks of nuclear energy. First, the environmental risks. Although it may emit less CO2, there are other negative consequences to take into account. For example, the thermal contamination of the water through the waste refrigeration process to handle residues, which can increase the water's temperature up to 15 degrees. This water is then taken back to the seas and oceans, and because of the increase in temperature, the rapid increase in temperature, it kills ecosystems and biodiversity, which then can cause problems for our survival as humans, because we will not be able to benefit from this. Additionally, what's more is that 90% of damages of pollution of water come directly from nuclear energy. So the alternative that they are proposing, in which it will solve all aspects of climate change, is not real. Secondly, safety issues. We talk about safety issues from radioactive waste, such as health risks, such as cancer, genetic mutations which derive from accidents such as Chernobyl, Fukushima. Although in today's society we may have technological advancements, since those accidents, we still have had nearly 200 more accidents, meaning that although those are the most well-known, these are ongoing accidents that happen and have big consequences for people, for the environment. Leaks, and so according to an NIC report, we can see how there's a 50% chance that before 2050, another major accident such as Chernobyl happens again, with all the threats that Chernobyl posed for our society. So how can we allow the nuclear energy use to continue if it will kill? There's a 50% chance that it will kill thousands of people and damage our environment for centuries to come. Additionally, there's also the issue of misuse, theft for illicit purposes, perpetuated by terrorist groups or unstable governments. The bigger the amount of residues, the bigger the amount of nuclear energy used, the bigger the amount that the bigger the risk that countries use nuclear power, nuclear energy, also for nuclear weapons. More so, apart from all these negative consequences, we pose a solution of an energetic mix of alternatives which are safer, greener, and cheaper to meet Europe's demand. The cost, we can see in this graph by the World Nuclear Industry Status, how that compares the cost of construction, of operation, and the production of energy in use of life of different powers. How we can see how the solar energy actually decreases level cost. We can see how the wind energy actually decreases, and the only one that increases is the nuclear energy. This is also not economically beneficial. Additionally, the cost of the energy itself is also bigger. The cost of solar energy is $36 per megawatt hours. For wind, it is $38 per megawatt hours. And for nuclear, it is $67, almost double as the others. Additionally, these alternatives that we pose are constant and consistent. The wind will always blow, the sun will always shine, and the earth will always produce heat. Each country can benefit from their own environmental positions and use these resources for solar, for hydropower, for biomass, depending on their resources. This is not the case with nuclear, as I've already explained. Uranium is limited, and also, even if we're going to use fusion, which is a possibility, even if we get to that point that we can use it, the hydrogen is also limited. Additionally, it is also possible to suffice the demand with renewables. For example, countries like Iceland, which is the country with most energy used per capita, still manages to provide 100% of its electricity demand and suffice it with the use of geothermal energy. Other countries, Uruguay, Costa Rica, and Norway do the same. So, with this, we say yes to the question. Thank you.
The sun has fueled life on Earth for billions of years, creating light and heat through nuclear fusion. Given that incredible power and longevity, it seems there can hardly be a better way to generate energy than by harnessing the same nuclear processes that occur in our own sun and stars. Hello everyone, my name is Diana, and as the R1 speaker of the opposition team, I'll prove that European countries should not, in fact, completely eliminate the use of nuclear energy. Our stance on this motion will be defended by 3 main points: sustainability, energy crisis, and deconstruction. However, before I expand on our team's arguments, I'd like to start off by refuting a point stated by the other team. The other team mentioned that nuclear power poses great safety risks to our society. However, data clearly proves that nuclear power is in fact one of the safest energy sources we have. In this chart, published by Our World in Data, we can clearly see that nuclear power has one of the lowest death rates per unit of electricity produced. It is also important to note that this number is below that of several renewable energy sources. This proves that nuclear power is in fact the safest way to produce reliable electricity, which is why it is crucial that we maintain it as part of Europe's supply. I'll now move on to explaining our points. Argument 1, sustainability. Our sustainability argument encompasses 2 main ideas: nuclear power's potential to be unlimited and its minimal land footprint. Nuclear power has the potential to be an infinite source of energy through nuclear fusion, which can guarantee a sustainable energy future for European countries accepted.
Nuclear power causes by contributing to 90% of damage to waters.
However, your alternative is to use renewable energies, and this also has several detrimental consequences on the environment because it occupies far more space than nuclear energy, which is why we cannot fully power our world with renewable energy. Since nuclear fusion reactors run on hydrogen, nuclear fusion is virtually limitless. In addition, it is inherently safe and doesn't emit any harmful substances into the atmosphere, nor does it produce any long-lived radioactive waste. Moreover, fusion reactors release massive amounts of energy compared to any of the other energy sources that we currently have. In fact, according to the International Atomic Energy Agency, fusion could generate nearly 4 million times more energy per kilogram of fuel than burning oil or coal. Since the reason we are currently so dependent on fossil fuels is mainly due to their high energy density, these statistics clearly prove that fusion could in fact replace fossil fuels and therefore provide Europe with a much cleaner energy future. As my partner has previously proved, eliminating nuclear energy drastically increases our reliance on fossil fuels. However, continuing to invest in this field and maintaining nuclear power would have the opposite effect. Our world is suffering from an environmental crisis and needs an efficient and sustainable energy source to replace fossil fuels. As I have proven, nuclear fusion is the most promising solution. The second part of our sustainability argument encompasses nuclear power's minimal land footprint. Nuclear power plants require small amounts of energy to produce small amounts of space to produce huge amounts of energy. In fact, according to the US Department of Energy, wind farms require 360 times more land to produce the same amount of electricity as one nuclear power plant. I'll not be accepting any more points of information. To put that into solar power plants require 75 times that space. So to put that into perspective,
you would need more than 3 million solar panels to produce the same amount of energy as a typical commercial reactor. Nuclear power minimizes disruptions to wildlife and natural habitats, all while leaving more land for vital purposes, such as agriculture, and therefore it ensures a sustainable future for Europe. Argument 2, energy crisis. With the recent outbreak of several wars, Europe has been the subject of a severe energy crisis. Since it can no longer rely on its past providers, energy security is now more important than ever, and a key factor in achieving this security is through the diversification of energy. Nuclear power has several characteristics that can greatly strengthen Europe's energy mix. Not only does it have an extremely high density, but it is also the most consistent and reliable energy source, according to the United States Department of Energy. This is why maintaining nuclear power is critical to ensure energy security. Not only is it important in the present context, but for the future of Europe too. The International Energy Agency projects total energy demand to increase by 21% by only 2040. This trend underscores the immeasurable importance of efficient energy sources such as nuclear fission and fusion to meet the global increasing energy demands. Argument 3, deconstruction. As the introduction speaker previously introduced, our deconstruction argument is supported by 3 main concepts: logistical impossibility, cost, and purpose. Decommissioning nuclear power plants is a long, complex, and costly process. This is especially true for older power plants, as these do not come with adequate decommissioning plans. This is a process that also poses a huge threat to the environment and those handling it, due to the presence of radiation and radioactive materials. Moving on to the second concept, cost. Deconstructing reactors requires massive funding, which will be incredibly hard to obtain. The cost of decommissioning a plant can reach from 300 million euros per gigawatt to several billions. Evidently, these costs are out of budget for many European countries which possess many nuclear power plants. Finally, we would like to emphasize that the money that would inevitably have to be spent on deconstruction, should this motion be imposed, could alternatively be invested in increasing the share of clean energies in Europe, which is ultimately the goal that we all want to achieve. This links in with our final concept, purpose. Our points have been sustainability, energy crisis, and deconstruction. We are therefore against this motion. Thank you all for your attention.
Tenías una duda, pero pensabas que era uno y exacto y cambia de color.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Priscila Gonzalez, and I am the second rebuttal of the team position in favor of the question posed in today's debate. Prior to reconstructing our own argumentative line, I would first like to touch on the opposing team's argument. They bring 3 arguments, starting with the first argument, sustainability, where they say that there's a potential to be unlimited for this energy to be unlimited by using nuclear fusion. Well, first of all, how does this give us a guarantee that it is worthwhile developing a nuclear fusion, considering all the risks that maintaining nuclear energy has on the environment, on our own safety, and on our political security? So therefore, there's no guarantee that actually developing this type of energy is going to be better or have a bigger impact than all the risks that we have presented. And also, even if they were able to demonstrate that, we have already explained how the hydrogen that is used to make this nuclear fusion is actually retrieved from particles of water, not from particles not from hydrogen that is present in the atmosphere, but from particles of water, which is not a resource that we can just dispense of and we have too much of. And therefore, their main point for developing nuclear fusion, being that it is unlimited, has just been proven to be false.
Now, moving on to their second argument of energy crisis, where they basically say that it is necessary for energetic independence and to meet the demands of Europe's energetic demands. But as we have said, so can other alternatives. They can meet this demand and they can make Europe energetically independent. We have brought the examples of Iceland, Norway, Uruguay, Costa Rica, all countries that gained almost 100% of its energy solely on a mixture of renewable energy sources like hydroelectric power or solar power, wind power, biomass, so many alternatives to nuclear fusion that have already demonstrated in previous cases can effectively supply countries with their full demand. And even if they didn't, even if that wasn't the case, and if the opposing team says that maybe renewable energies aren't constant or reliable, countries can use the natural source resources they have in each country to benefit from these types. There are so many different alternatives to this that each can be used for a different purpose. Or even more, if, for example, countries like Iceland, which has immense volcanic activities, can use geothermal energy and all that extra geothermal energy they produce to sell to other European countries, enhancing and improving this independence. Your question?
So, one of the opposition team's most stated points in this debate is the risks and catastrophes of nuclear energy. So, is the opposition team saying that there are no enormous risks for other alternatives energy sources, such as the ones that you were saying, when their death count is even more elevated?
There are many risks the risks associated with renewable energies are far less than the risks of nuclear energy, as we already said. Firstly, the risks to the environment. Renewable energies do not emit carbon emissions like nuclear energy, but it also doesn't pose a threat to the environment in other ways. For example, the thermal contamination of water, as we have already said, through the systems of refrigeration of nuclear waste, water is thermally contaminated and it can increase up to 15 degrees, meaning that when it's then released to the ocean, it causes huge aquatic biodiversity problems and problems to those types of ecosystems that other renewable energies don't improve. Now, on their third argument of the deconstruction, they basically say that the process of deconstructing it is long and costly. Well, it doesn't really have to be, since it doesn't have to be a sudden elimination. It could be gradual. We can develop the use of new renewable energy sources, gradually eliminating the use of nuclear energy, and therefore preventing all of this from happening. But also, even if we couldn't do that, and even if that wasn't the case, the risks are so much bigger than the possible consequences. A report by the MIT Technology Review highlights that there's a 50% chance that another accident as big as Chernobyl happens before 2050. A 50% chance of having the enormous, tremendous consequences that Chernobyl had. And we cannot take this risk. But this is not the only research that says so. There's so much empirical research that highlights this possibility. According to this study, there's a 99% chance that an accident happens in the next 30 years. We cannot take these chances for granted. And we cannot, the risks outweigh the possible benefits in so many ways. Moving on to our own argumentative line. We have said that nuclear energy poses threats to our safety. But they said that nuclear power has one of the least deaths per production of energy. Well, just because maybe something's worse doesn't mean that another thing isn't bad. Let me put you an example. Maybe the consequences or the effects of a gunshot are worse than that of a knife stab. But does that mean that I can now go stabbing everyone? No, just because something might be worse, like coal energy, and produce more deaths, doesn't mean that the consequences of nuclear energy aren't bad and cause deaths and therefore should be completely eliminated. In our second argument of alternatives, they've said that renewable energy occupies more space. And even though it is true, seeing as it prevents so many of the risks that nuclear energy has, this is not a disadvantage, and it is not a disadvantage. And therefore, the only possible answer is a yes. Thank you.
Coal, 100,000 deaths. Oil, 36,000 deaths. Biofuel and biomass, 24,000 deaths. Renewables, 1,990 deaths. Nuclear, only 90 deaths. This chart containing data from Forbes publication shows the deaths produced by each energy per 1,000 terawatts an hour. This clearly portrays the incredibly low index of mortality produced by nuclear energy compared to other sources. Good afternoon, my name is Chloe Trask, and today I will be performing the rebuttal to speaker for the opposition team. I will start now by rebuttaling the proposition team's point. They talked about how there are other options to nuclear energy, for instance, renewables. The renewable energies are good for the environment, and this team doesn't agree with that affirmation. And also, the costs would be so elevated that changing to a 100% transition to renewable energies is almost impossible. The University of Yale calculated that a global effort to transition to 100% renewables would cost nations $73 trillion upfront. So yes, it is possible if you have $73 trillion. I would also like to cite the website Forbes, which explained in one of their articles how the worst accident of all time in the energy sector was the 1925 collapse of the Vanqiao hydroelectric in China. It killed and collapsed between 170,000 and 230,000 people. Did we even question banning renewables then? Of course we did not. So why are we letting minor incidents compared to this one in nuclear energy make us question its efficiency? Talking about efficiency, I would like to also mention their point on how the efficiency that nuclear power plants bring isn't worth the danger that it has. But I'm sorry, what danger? If you have been listening to my team until now, you'll be able to know that and understand that nuclear energy is barely a threat to us or to the planet anymore. The infinite safety measures that nuclear power has makes the chance of anything being harmed impossible. To put you in perspective, looking at only one of the countless energy, organizations, the IAEA, it has some basic safety standards and many organizations to prove how nuclear power plants are endlessly safe. Sorry, your point.
What makes you think they're still safe even if there's a 50% chance that an incident like Chernobyl will happen by 2050?
Thank you so much for saying that, because actually I have evidence to prove otherwise, which says that it's not a 50% chance, but actually there's one, according to the IAEA, the chances of a large-scale nuclear accident are 1 in 1 billion per year of operation, and the proposition team said it was on 50%, which is a ridiculous amount. I would also like to continue talking about the other options, renewables. Well, they talk about renewables as if they're so good for the environment, unlike nuclear energy, apparently. But I would like for you to look at this drawing of this is the whole land in our world, and this circle represents the land that would be occupied by renewables if we were to transition to 100% renewables. Obviously, this is a ridiculous amount of land, which would be so bad for the environment that it's not okay to just change to renewables 100%. So the alternative is not okay. Now, I would also like to talk about their point about how nuclear energy is finite. Well, that is not true. This is a very true statement. However, we must that is not true, because already using fission, we have left 5.5 million metric tons of uranium, which is a 230-year supply, almost 2.5 centuries. So, also, apart from that, we could extract uranium from water, which would give us 4.5 billion metric tons of uranium, which could last us around 60,000 years. I would also like to talk about what they said about how fusion is dangerous because it contaminates water and it is very bad for the environment. However, the opposition team doesn't think that the proposition team is aware of the fact that nuclear fusion can happen with other things, and it doesn't have to happen with water. There's other elements that are not in water with which we can achieve fusion. Now, I would also like to talk about the example that they showed with Iceland. They showed an example about how nuclear energy was possible. However, this is a generalization. They're showing one example, one country who achieved it. But what about the whole continent? How are they showing that the whole continent could be able to do this? We're talking about Europe, not Iceland. Thank you. Now, I would like to rebuttal to, thank you for listening to me. I have rebutted the proposition's points, and I have stated that nuclear energy should in fact not be eliminated because it is essential to Europe. Thank you.
Strives to reduce carbon emissions and combat vigorously against climate change, we cannot afford to overlook the great potential of nuclear power. Thank you to the opposing team, judges, and audience for such a fruitful debate on this crucial matter. As the opposition's conclusion speaker, I will prove beyond a doubt that European countries should not eliminate nuclear power. I will do this by first addressing the proposition team's arguments and how we successfully refuted each and every one of them, and second, by a reiteration of our line of the debate and how it unquestionably prevailed. To their first argument on risks, we thrivingly mitigated the impact of their argument by proving that the unsafety surrounding nuclear power is evidently no longer a case of truth. Having showcased a very wide range of compelling evidence in which it is affirmed that an extremely low mortality index is connected to nuclear power, especially when put into comparison with renewables, further dismantling their second argument as well. We also supported our claim of nuclear energy no longer posing significant threats to human lives by proving that with countless thorough safety measures, legislations, and protocols in place to prevent alleged unsafety, highlighting how these have all been further improved post the nuclear accidents driven by human error only of the past. This simply underscores the responsible application of nuclear power worldwide. To their second argument, named alternatives, we demonstrated that by eliminating nuclear, we would only be driving the rise of fossil fuel percentages. We highlighted that there is a hierarchy of priorities. It is unreasonable and unnecessary to target the elimination of nuclear power when we aren't succeeding in significantly reducing or eliminating fossil fuels beforehand. How can we deny that eliminating nuclear would only drag us further away from our decarbonization goals? A vital European goal the proposition have decided to disregard. Moreover, we have provided countless examples from reliable sources which it is certified that renewables are in fact responsible for far more deaths than nuclear accidents summed in total. This undoubtedly speaks for itself and indeed gives us this crucial point of clash entirely in our favor. On to the reiteration of our strong standing argumental line in which we have presented a strong case for the need to retain nuclear power. In our leading argument, sustainability, we demonstrated the incredible potential of nuclear power being unlimited in the very near future. On the other hand, renewables pose numerous downfalls, as I have already proven despite being limited. This is vital as it showcases how nuclear is the only clean energy which is able to meet the concerning energy demand growth of our society. When we have the very energy source which is able to solve the energy crisis in Europe by our side, we must keep it. Which links to energy crisis. The pivotal role of nuclear power protects us from this form of vulnerability and over-dependence on fossil fuels. And lastly, our deconstructing argument. The decommissioned nuclear plants is flawed all the way through and simply corroborates why the elimination of nuclear power cannot go forward. In conclusion, our team's conclusive arguments have been sustainability, energy crisis, and deconstruction. Thank you all.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Laura de Laura, and today I will be the concluder for the team which is completely in favor of the question posed today in this debate. During my intervention, I will first explain how my team has rebutted the other team's arguments, and then I will move on to explaining why our arguments are still standing. So to begin with, the other team's brought us 3 arguments. In their first argument of sustainability, they talk about how nuclear energy has the potential to be an unlimited resource with fusion. However, as my team has explained, fusion has to use atoms from hydrogen, which comes from water, and is already a resource that is running out, and therefore it is not an unlimited solution to this problem. Also, as the second rebuttal of my team has said, they don't guarantee that developing fusion is worthwhile, considering all of the risks to the environment, safety, and security that we've brought. In their second argument of energy crisis, they talk about the importance of energy independence. However, as my team has explained, countries can also find this independence with renewable sources. And we have given the examples of many countries such as Iceland, Norway, Uruguay, and many others that sustain themselves entirely on a mix of renewable sources, therefore achieving energy independence without nuclear energy. In their third argument of deconstruction, they talk about the deconstruction of nuclear plants, how this is a long and costly process. However, as my team has said, we're defending a gradual elimination of nuclear energy, which will make this process more efficient. And as well as this, as the second rebuttal of my team said, even if it weren't like this, the risks that we could avoid by eliminating nuclear energy are more important than the possible consequences that the other team is bringing. Now moving on to our own arguments. We have brought 2 arguments. In our first argument of risks, we talk about the environmental and security risks that nuclear energy poses. So this, the other team has said that nuclear power is one of the safest energy sources, and that it has the lowest rate of deaths, a lower rate of deaths than other energies. However, as the second rebuttal of my team has proven, these risks do exist with nuclear energy, and it brought 2 evidences. That there's a 50% chance that another accident will happen by 2050, and there's also a 99% chance of an accident happening by 2030. As well as this, as the second rebuttal of my team said, even if energies like coal have more deaths than have a lot of deaths, this doesn't mean that nuclear energy doesn't produce any deaths or accidents. In our second argument of alternatives, we state how there are many better alternatives to nuclear energy. To this, they have said that renewable alternatives occupy more land space than nuclear. However, as the second rebuttal of my team has proven, the benefits that we could gain by eliminating nuclear energy outweigh this possible consequence of occupying more space. Therefore, with our 2 arguments of risks and alternatives, we've proven how the only possible answer to the question posed today is a yes. Thank you.